Great. So we are live. Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to today's panel discussion. My name is Faiza Yousuf, and I'll be your moderator today, talking to four amazing panelists about their experience in technology leadership and some really important questions around technical leadership. So we have today with us Yasser Bashir. He's the CEO of Arbisoft. We have Sophia Hasnain, CEO from LinkedIn, Asim Ghaffar, who's a co-founder of EasyFresh Technologies, and Ahmed Ayub will also join us. He's the CTO of Airlift Technologies. I'm not getting into a detailed introduction because I would really like them to, take a few minutes and talk about themselves and let us know about the work that they do and how do they view technology leadership. So let's start with Sophia. Sophia, can you please do?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Faiza and Talha, for giving this opportunity. I'm Sophia Hasnain, CEO of LinkedIn. My background is in engineering, and previously I have worked in different marketing strategy roles and embedded systems role here in Pakistan and abroad as well, looking at different financial services products, telecom products, and all that. In 2016 January, so exactly 6 years ago, I started this organization called LinkedIn, looking at a very basic technology problem at that time, because at that time the IoT hype was a lot more, much bigger than what we see right now, when people were promising about 50 billion devices by 2020. And I had the very basic question, how is that possible in emerging markets like Pakistan and other developing markets where there isn't the infrastructure available to get the right benefits out of the IoT. So like looking at, for example, the basic problem that we do not have ubiquitous internet or power, reliable power supply, how can we actually get the benefits? We started with that technology problem, building products, IoT products for emerging markets. And over the last, and actually after that, about for good 2-3 years, we spent a lot of time in developing different use cases. So we have shown successful delivery of IoT in enterprise areas, smart home kind of solutions as well, agriculture. But since 2019, our focus has been a lot more on industrial IoT. So transforming industries, enabling them to adopt IoTs, get the benefits of IoT in their setups. And the second thing that we work on is the climate, because we think that the next industrial growth, and if we are talking about Industry 4.0, so the next industrial growth is going to come with the, that will be responsive, will have to be, climate sensitive and also contribute to making the climate. So we look at climate change products as well, such as we have got the largest network of air quality monitors running in Karachi, Lahore, Peshawar, Islamabad. So focusing both on industry as well as taking care of the climate. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Sophia. Yasser, maybe you can go next.
Gee, thank you, Faiza. Thank you, Talha. Can you hear me all right? My name is Yasser Bashir. I am a veteran of the software industry in Lahore. 2022 is a special year because it marks my 25 years in the industry here. And the first 10 of those 25 years were spent in working at different companies, firstly in engineering roles and later on as an engineering leader or engineering manager. And in 2007, we started this company that I currently run. It's called Arbisoft. We consider ourselves to be one of the few mid-sized software companies in Pakistan. There are no large-sized software companies, so we'll be closing in on around 800 people this year. And we've worked across a few industries in these 15 years, helping other organizations build their technology. So yeah, that's that's my introduction.
Thank you. Asim, can you go next, please?
Yes, so my name is Asim. I am a co-founder of EasyFresh Technology, and but I am in industry for almost like 18-19 years. Previously, I was with LMKR, then with Zameen. I also worked with Nokia, but more recently, this EasyFresh is basically a B2B supply chain, and we are trying to see how we can use technology to do something about this whole existing RP and Mandi system. I'm kind of like sold to this idea because it also had an impact aspect to it, and but it's also a lot of engineering that goes behind it. So yeah, so that's like a brief introduction of me.
Thank you, Asim. Ahmed, welcome on board, and maybe you can introduce yourself, please.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ahmed Ayub. I'm one of the co-founders at Airlift Technologies. I've been working in different software companies since 1998, and graduated from Lahore fast, and worked in Lahore for a good 10 years, actually 6-7 years in Lahore, and then Islamabad, and then in Karachi. Systems Limited was my first one. Then I moved to LMKR for a couple of years, and then that's Asim and I think we overlapped at LMKR for a couple of years. Then Folio 3 and 10 Pearls recently in the last 8-10 years. And almost, I think all of you, Sophia, Yasser, and Asim have been great influence and help and support in helping me on whatever we have achieved so far. I remember the 2016 startup of the Link Things, and constant support from Yasser and Asim in different, so learning with all of you.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. So I've prepared questions for each of you as per your expertise and the work that you do, but I would really like you guys to please feel free to jump on any question that you want to answer, because I want it more like a free-flowing discussion rather than me taking a viva from you guys. And I have a teaching experience, so I can be a very strict teacher. So as this discussion started from a blog post that Talha sent me that Asim wrote, and I was reading it, and we had this discussion about technology leadership and how it's evolving, especially in this highly accelerated time of technology. So I have a question for all of you, and maybe you can, answer one after another. So what do you think that this role of a CTO or a technology leader evolved in the last 5 years, and what are you expecting in the next 5 to 10 years when it comes to technology leadership? So anyone can go first. Maybe Asim can start. Yeah.
Yeah, so I already wrote about that in the article, so I thought I wish others would have spoken first. But yeah, so it's not just about the CTO, it's about almost all the leadership roles and management roles in the technology side. What I at least felt was that after 10 years back or 15 years back, there was a lot of emphasis on the general management. So it was actually considered bad if you are a manager or a director and you are doing stuff like writing code and things like that. But that kind of like mindset is no longer valid. In fact, it's actually counterproductive. So in my opinion, I have seen that with the specifically because of these venture-backed startups, but also because how services companies are innovating, there's more and more push for the engineering leaders to be like also good in engineering, not just in leadership. So, and hopefully when we, so yeah, as Yasser said that right now we only have mid-sized company. When we will move to large and size company in future, there might be a separate career path for management type people and engineering type people. But right now we cannot afford to have like too many leaders, some general management, some just engineering tech lead type people. So the Series A, pre-Series A, even Series B, those type of companies, they need people who are good with the leadership skills, people management, people development, but really, really good with the high level system design and even can go deeper and solve problem in technical sense that the junior engineers can look up. So yeah, so the role has kind of like, actually it's not changed because these type of companies didn't exist a few years back. So all these venture-backed startups, most of them came like in the 5-6 years So this new role has emerged, where a CTO is someone who everyone can look as a role model, even from the engineering point of view.
Right. Ahmed, can you go next on that?
Yeah. So it's a very interesting question. So it's part of the evolution that our industry in Pakistan is going through. I think the understanding and interpretation of titles and designations has really evolved in the US market. Basically, that's where that is the technology hub. And there have been articles and documents and websites that actually talk about levels and other things. So just with the advent of startups, some of that has moved here, just as what Asim said. What is happening right now is that we are trying to figure out what a CTO would actually mean. I think it's a very big title, Chief Technology Officer. It sounds big. I saw in the questions document it was also written in front of my name. I'd be proud to, but I'm not. So we need people who actually understand technology. So in a startup world, in the very beginning, everybody who walks into the office must be able to code. And you can write CTO, GTO, BTO in front of your name. That doesn't really matter. If you can code, join in. But in a few years' time, you need to start defining people based on their skill sets, because team is larger, 100, 200 people, 150 people. You really need to name them. You really need to identify them, not because they are in a hierarchy, not because the number of people who report to them, but because the depth of knowledge that they have. That's the true sense of where this position lies. And I think that interpretation is improving with time. So in yesteryears, when I was working in services organizations, project management, the PMI type project management was something sellable. And as part of Folio 3 and 10% and Systems Limited, I knew that projects actually needed project managers. Come startups, I probably don't need project managers. I need engineering managers. I need people who can code whenever needed. And so with the advent of that direction, moving upwards, CTO will be that position. So there are two paths as well. There will be people you need to actually deliver the product. I mean, people who are good with people who have good people management skills, people who have communication skills, schedule skills, etc. But then there will be people who are quote unquote ICs. And unfortunately in Pakistan, you call somebody an IC and they are offended. And because we haven't put in a lot of respect around the IC role. Everybody wants to become a manager, and so now this CTO path of some sort compared to a VP of engineering path, they are becoming two or three different things where somebody can grow into a certain level, even with having a technical depth, and may not have the bestest of leadership capabilities. They should be able to do research and figure things out. So I'm talking a lot of things, and this is so true. Every company has a completely different definition of this role, but this is a very technical role. It is hands-on. This is not a person who is expected to just go out there and do presentations for the technical architecture that you have. It's actually a hands-on person who makes POCs, and so that's what CTO is for me, I think, for now.
Right. Thank you, Ahmed. Sophia, would you like to jump in on that? What does technical leadership mean to me, and how it has evolved?
So I think CTO role, can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the CTO role is in my opinion, is a business role with in-depth technology information and knowledge. So it is someone who is at the top, like in the line with CEO, CMO. So he is or she is actually leading the technology division, understands where the business wants to go. So it's keeping this in mind that right now we're talking about startups and the companies and the product companies rather than, software services companies. So, the CTO has to actually translate the business requirements for the technology teams and make sure that technology that is chosen or the path that is chosen is actually delivered by the technology team. So for example, if you're talking about, for example, revenue targets of $1 million or getting 1 million customers, for example, on board on the system, that is the vision needs to be translated from our business numbers to the technology side, and that's the role. And obviously that cannot be achieved by someone who hasn't ever coded or hasn't ever done anything. And I think, hands-on, yes, I would love the CTO to be hands-on, but I think what is actually needed a lot more than being hands-on is that you can actually get to the root of the problem quickly. So like, a CTO with that kind of experience, like ask 5 questions from the developer and tell them, you're doing this wrong. And I think that is the type of a person that you need for the CTO, someone who translates the vision, the business to the technology team and can actually identify, everything, because there you have got system architects and, coders and junior coders and UI designers and everyone, but someone who can actually set the vision for the technology. That's what this role is about.
Right. Yasser, can you expand on that, please?
Gigi, I think adding on to what everybody else has said, I feel like the term CTO was much more relevant maybe 15, 20 years ago. Because if you look at the technology startups then, they were building technology most of the times, right? They were breaking new ground, maybe creating new technology. These days, most of the startups and many of the examples in Pakistan especially are not companies that are building new technology. They're using technology to maybe build a new business, right? So I think that fundamental distinction is necessary. So 15, 20 years ago, the person who was named CTO would typically be the person who is setting the vision and the direction, as Sophia said, for the new technology that was going to be built. So in addition to all of the programmers and coders and the VPs of engineering, you needed a guy who could foresee the future, who could say, okay, this is how Moore's law is going to change. So this is where the direction of the company should be, and this is how our product should evolve. I think that role has essentially gone for 90% of the tech-based startups, so-called tech-based startups now. It's only maybe 10 to 15% of the startups that are doing new groundbreaking technology work. So that's why I feel like the term CTO has become kind of a misnomer for many of the organizations today, not just in Pakistan, like in Bahar bhi. So in the US, I think there's a clear movement that we see among our customers from the US where essentially the role is VP of engineering, as Ahmed said, and there's no CTO role at all. Problem happens, I know why the role comes about. It's because you're starting a new company and you have a technical co-founder and you're the CEO and you don't have a good enough term for the technical co-founder, right? So you start calling them CTO, that's fine. So in that context, that's who the CTO is, even if it's just a programmer, right? So you'll call them the CTO because they're the technical co-founder. In another company, you're managing a bunch of people, you're not doing any tech yourself, but there's nobody else, there's no other engineering manager, so they'll call you the CTO. So I feel like now it's become highly contextual. 15, 20 years ago, the definition of CTO meant something completely different. And these days, for almost anything that you're doing and being called CTO for, you could be called something else, which is way more appropriate. So whether it's chief architect or engineering manager or VP of engineering, in terms of what you do, that would be more appropriate. But in terms of your importance in the organization, many people still assume the CTO title because it's a reflection of a higher position in the organization.
So just to add to what Yasser said, because this is actually happening to me for the last 3 years. So I have never written CTO with my name. And other than me, everybody calls me a CTO, and I'm very proud of it. I'm not the CTO. I'm the technical co-founder for Airlift. And this is general interpretation of calling somebody who's high up in the organization. It's just a way of respect. Bhai कहने किसी को साहब,
Right.
So I think, can I just jump in for a second?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please. Okay.
Yeah, I think Yasser made a very good point that, 10, 15 years ago, the companies were developing a lot more technology than these days. But I think with the tech-enabled businesses coming in, and I think CTO, or you can call this name, whatever you want to call this title, this person, whoever, but that's also something that is required by even these tech-enabled businesses. Because I have seen that, when the CEO has a good idea, but I mean, obviously it has to be implemented on the technology side. So they need someone who can actually give them the direction, make sure that the technology that is being built is actually going to support the business ambitions, goals, whatever. So I think that role is still needed, but we can call it whatever we would like to.
So a couple of things I just wanted to add. So obviously we are talking in terms of CTO for the software industry, but the CTO role is not the software industry. Telcos maybe, and there's pharmaceuticals and FMCGs. So they all have CTO. And the general definition of CTO versus CIO at that point was that CIO was more inward facing and CTO was more to outward facing. Whatever value the company or the organization is creating, it has a lot of technical aspects to that, whether it's regulatory frameworks or IP and so on and on. So the CTO was the point person for that. Some of that is still true for software, but obviously in software startups or tech-enabled startups or tech startups, the definition has changed a lot from that type of CTO, which was more like an executive vision, to someone who's more like, okay, this is the value that we want to create at this stage. What are the right technical decisions that we need to do? The second thing I just wanted to add was that, which Yasser actually pointed and Ahmed also, that, so I also don't call myself CTO. In fact, I think all the C-level positions, whether it's CEO, CTO, CIO, we are all, as a co-founder, we are just the acting CEO, CTO, CIO. We are just looking for the right people to take our place when the time is right, when we have raised to the right level. But in the meanwhile, someone has to take those type of decisions. So whether you are technical co-founder or just a co-founder, whoever is taking that decision is more or less like the acting CTO. But so I just wanted to make sure that people understand that even a lot of founders who have to call CTO for any reason, they know in their heart that they are more or less acting CTOs for that stage of the company.
I think the point that I was also making was that when you say, okay, what does a CTO do, right? I think it's important to understand as very, very contextual. And the context comes in many different dimensions and flavors. So one context is, what is the type of the organization, right? Maybe it's an FMCG. Then the CTO's role is completely different from whether it's a technology-based organization. If it's a startup and the CTO is not writing code, then, you're 5 people and you have a CTO who's not writing code, it just doesn't make sense. So I think maybe to sum up what everyone has said, whenever you say, okay, this is what the CTO does, the context is really important. So always ask the question, what is the context here? What is the type of the organization? What is the stage of the organization? So a CTO at a startup would be doing things completely different from a CTO at a post-Series C or post-Series D organization. So I think setting the context is important.
Right. I think let's start with Ahmed. Maybe I have a question specifically for you. So COVID-19 brought a lot of changes for companies, especially a company like yours, and from mass transit to grocery delivery. What was the pivot like for your technology team, and how did you manage this whole thing of making sure that the team stays motivated while you are going through this change?
Yes, it was a tough one. I mean, so when it happened, when it started happening, anything and everything that grouped people together, like our bus service, was a no, and so we had to actually pause it down immediately. We stopped the airlift buses even before the government announced it. It was a tough call for us, and there was not enough guidance at that level. I mean, even our our investors, even in the institutional investors, didn't have a lot of clues what to do. And so we took some time. I think the only thing we have always been, now that we have seen it work, we've been proud of, is the speed at which we have operated. So we took 5 to 6 weeks to actually, 4 weeks to actually gather ourselves out, because there was so much of a wrap up to be done for a scaling business. There were buses, drivers, partners on the transport side, etc. Wrap all of those down and then jump into a completely different mindset. Having this the same technology team to build it again, a new thing from scratch. I mean, they've been working relentlessly hard for the last 1 year, 1.5 years, and now to tell them that it's a reset and we have to do it again and do it. I think it's a lot to do with how Usman and I and Meher, we all operated. We never let people think that we are worried. I mean, there had to be this energy on the floor, because as much as it was difficult for them, it was difficult physically as well for us, our families and others, because right when you are you're sort of sensing Series B, you are put back to square one. So it was a tough one for us. But I think that movement again from our side, and the culture on the floor, that really helped us out. I mean, we worked with people together. We were on the floors, we were in the warehouses, we were everywhere. I know Usman, and I know head of HR. Everybody has delivered groceries, because when there were no riders, we had stopped software development for a day because there were some riders strike, and we all went to a warehouse and we took packages and we delivered. So there was a lot of, I don't think it's the technology that has helped us in that. It's the will that people showed. And I think all of us together, we were seeing something that we were building, and so that helped us. I think the pivot, now that we call it, was only a realignment of making a statement, because we were doing really nicely on the buses side, and it was very hard for us to let go on that. Plus, there was this change. We created the website on WooCommerce, and people who are in technology. I mean, so WooCommerce is a sort of a certain level. It's not associated with a lot of scale, and so we created a WooCommerce website, one warehouse, 4 bikes, and we started. And then we were building every day and converting it back to a stronger backend infrastructure as things move. So there was a lot of gamification. There was a lot of samosa and pizzas at office. A lot of bringing doodh patti chai for the team at middle of the nights. But yeah, I think that's there, and that is what I'll go to any lengths to make sure Airlift grows in that way, that the team keeps thinking in that way. I have so much confidence now that if we can build this from back from the bus service, we can build anything from such a team.
Right. So my question is that how much of this is part of a CTO's role? Because we just spoke about them being very hands-on on coding, and now we are talking about them being the flag bearer of the company, making sure that people are staying motivated. So how do we define this, and what kind of right balance of skills are required here? Anyone?
I think, so this is less of a, I mean, definitely there's a lot of technology built up there. But I think it's more of a mind game, being on the floor and showing that you are tense has its own ripples. Being on the floor and showing that you are excited is a completely different thing. and while you are actually crying from inside, and so that's a kind of leadership. I don't want to create a lot of buzzwords here, but that's the kind of person you would want to see on the floor, having fun with production issues. Like there have been instances where our production was almost done. Somebody wrote a script that was supposed to be on the QA server because we are moving really fast. And so not blaming anybody though, so that Google's way of having no blame retros, we actually had no blame retros. Nobody's was supposed to call anybody names. I mean, who did what is not important. What needs to be fixed is important. Move forward, don't cry, move forward, we'll fix it. That's not a big issue. I mean, there are people who are bringing you the biggest of the biggest bugs, and you want to sort of like shout out loud, and you tell, "Acha, ye to koi masla hi nahi yaar, ye to hota rehta hai, ho jayega, problem nahi." And so I don't think it's the technology mostly. It's the way you treat them, and it's the way you build them up. I think, and we were aligned on that in multiple, in so many ways. Me and Gul and Meher and Shariar and Ali, everybody, the team. So we spent so much time on bringing humility to people, selection on humility to people, that it's at times it seems that we are arrogant, but I think that has really helped us, because every manager they go to is talking to them in the same language, and so that has actually helped. We built the whole thing from scratch in 5 weeks. So May 20th we started it, and April 20th we started it. May 25th we launched, and it is apparently working. So I think it's not, I won't call it a CTO thing. It's a general respect relationship thing.
Right. If someone wants to jump on that, please feel free to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Ahmed is trying to say is that you need to just kind of like, as a probably more like a co-founder, that you own that stuff. You want the people to get inspired. You find the right team, and then you just support them, facilitate them to do their best. If it means bringing them tea, so be it. If it means doing some pet talk, that's you need to do. So it's less of a technical, more like inspiring them with the right reasons and with the right information.
Right. Thank you, Asim. So, Sophia, I have a question for you. So, as you run a company that's in the domain of emerging tech, how hands-on a CTO should be for leading a company like yours? Do you think an engineering degree is a must for this role?
Absolutely, absolutely. So CTO without an engineering degree, I can't even think of that. Yeah, and very hands-on. But I don't expect CTO or the senior people to be actually writing the code. I mean, I can code, but I think my basic coding is good enough to actually identify even where the bug is. As I said earlier, good CTO has to be technical, set the vision, and the third thing is that has to be so experienced that ask 5 questions and where the problem is. So definitely, and especially in our case, which is both hardware and software, I feel that we need someone who understands a bit of electronics, hardware side, as well as the software and the direction that is going on. I was talking to a friend of mine who's running an IoT company in the US, and both of us, while talking, realized that the reason we could actually do it much easier. For us, it just came natural. The whole IoT thing was because we both had computer systems engineering degrees. So we had the whole background. We looked at things from the systems perspective and had the hardware and software exposure while in college or in university. So I think that definitely engineering degree is required. More systems approach is required. Hands-on, yes, you need to go and talk to the developer, go and talk to the system architect and try to understand. what's happening and guide them and all that. But yeah, if need be, pick up the computer and start coding, but not that shouldn't be your daily job. No.
Right.
I think that's a really important point that Sophia made. I feel like in computing, when you're trying to solve problems or technology, right? Problems happen. Ahmed also alluded to it. And then they start kind of trickling up the value chain, start getting escalated. And the CTO, in my mind, is the person where essentially the buck stops, right? I mean, if they're not able to solve the problem, then there's probably nobody in the organization that knows how to solve that problem. Sometimes it's not knowing the solution to the problem yourself. It's figuring out, it's being resourceful about, okay, how do I find somebody who can solve this problem? I remember I got a call from Airlift once. I hope Ahmed won't mind my sharing this. Past midnight, I think, saying, okay, we're, basically getting like a denial of service attack. So what should we do, right? And then I was able to connect them with somebody who could help them solve that problem. So just being resourceful like that, I think is also important.
Right.
Absolutely. And really the buck
many
stops
such
at
calls.
the CTO.
Please go ahead, Sophia.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, the buck stops at the CTO. So, just knowing, identifying the problem, and then finding a way to solve it and support the team. So as Ahmed was saying earlier on as well, that, no blame retrospectives. And that's how it should be, that, it's not to be blamed and somebody needs to be condemned and all that. You need to build a culture where people can openly discuss the challenges that they are facing, and then can, you support it. So, as CEO, I support my technical team way more than, they expect themselves, like, that I would come and support it. But that's how I think you need to build a culture where they can openly, transparently discuss all the challenges, because obviously there'll be bugs, there'll be challenges. We are humans, we are developing code, and there'll be challenges, but we have to have this attitude in the organization that, we're not going to blame anyone for this. We'll solve it together.
By the way, one question that all CTOs, I think, we talked about how it's so contextual, but I think in any context, one question that I expect any CTO is supposed to be able to answer is, how does the technology work today, and how is it going to scale to the next level of scale up, right? How is it going to go from today to 10x, let's say? So if there's an order of magnitude scale up, how is the technology going to work out? So that, I think, is one answer that every CTO needs to have. At the startup, very early stages of a startup, it could just be, how do you go from 10 users to 100 users? But at Airlift scale, it could be a question of how do you go from 100,000 to 1 million users, right? So that is one question that I expect consistently CTOs to answer.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things here. So I do think that in some companies, CTO need to be hands-on and writing actual code, but it can't be at that point where he or she becomes a bottleneck for others to not do their job. So yeah, so as you grow, there will be less and less an opportunity for the CTO to be working on the most important stuff, because otherwise he or she will be on the critical path. But he needs to be hand-on, at least in the earlier stages. But then there comes a point, and with each stage, you start finding people who are better than you in at least certain aspects. They have a more deeper understanding of maybe security or the databases or the API or the cloud, whatever. You find those people who are like really, really expert masters of those fields. But then comes that challenge where different of these, like your team, they have different opinions on different matters. Then as a CTO, you have to see, okay, what makes sense? Should we care about the security right now more than the speed? What is the right trade-off at this point, or probably or for today? Maybe you say, okay, today just build the next API and do the security bit tomorrow. That's how quickly you have to think in the start of it. But sometimes when you hire these experts who are better than you in, let's say, front end, back end, API, architecture, whatever, they cannot still take that higher level decision of the trade-off. Why? Because CTO by definition, or acting CTO by definition, has to think more in terms of like a little bit longer than what everyone else in the team is thinking. So if the team is working in 1 week, 2 week iteration, the CTO has to think like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. If the team is working in 2, 3 months iteration, the CTO has to think in 1 year, 3 years. So those are the kind of like exposure or the data that only sometimes CTO have in the technical organization. So he or she need to make those trade-off calls, even if there are better people than him in their specific disciplines.
Right. So as Sophia said, that it's more about systems thinking and looking at the bigger picture is, what we are getting at. So Asim, question for you. So you have moved industries from fossil fuel to real estate to now, supply chain. What differences did you notice in your role as a technical leader at each of these organizations? And did you need to learn new skills to make this, transition from one to another industry?
Yeah, so there are two parts to it. So as far as learning is concerned, even in my current role, every week I need to take on some other assignment and I have to learn those things, whether it's like maybe learning a little bit more about Excel or the API or security or whatever. So when you are changing company, definitely there are a lot more learning from product domain to the actual technology infrastructure that is used behind those products. So in these three companies, the one key difference was that so LMCare is more like corporate type company. It has a product which was sold to oil and gas industry. So that product has like a 20 years legacy. So it's the delivery time was once a year or once a quarter, and those type of timelines were there. In Zameen, when I was there, so it was more like a weekly based delivery. What we are doing right now, it's basically daily. So that's so while so that's one difference, that delivery. So when you are thinking in terms of a 1 year delivery or 1 quarter release per quarter, you are doing planning. Even if you are using Agile or Scrum, you are doing planning in a totally different mindset as compared to when you get a call in from the CEO in the morning that I want this thing by tonight. You have a different type of skill that you need to deliver on that. The second thing is the scale of the number of people. So at LMCare, it was like 100 plus team that I was managing. And I had to be a lot more hands-off because there were just so many people, and oil and gas market was crashed at that time. So it was really a lot of people problems that I had to solve. But in Zameen, I got fewer people, so I had a lot more time to go deeper into the tech. I was still not involved in the full stack development, but at least at the data model level and at the product level, I was like really thinking, okay, what can go into the product? So I have to learn some of those skills. I was not used to CRM type applications before that. Before that, I was working on the scientific computing. And in here, I now have to do everything. So I have to like pick what is the right backend technology, what is the front end technology. Do we need to use Google Forms rather than coding for now, and so on and on. So it's a pre-stage. You have to just pick up and learn whatever you can to get things done for today. I hope this answers the question.
Right. Thank you, Asim. So Yasser, for you, as we know that you've been making some angel investments, is your decision to invest in a company is influenced by its technology, leadership's aptitude, and the way they are leading the product and their team?
I'm listening.
So absolutely. I think it's a really important determinant in my case, because technology is what I understand as well, right? So many times I may not be able to understand the vision for the product as such, although it's obviously absolutely essential that that be understood as well. But I've done quite a few investments where I was just simply inspired by how much the technology team had accomplished in a small amount of time. And I thought that even though I don't really agree with the direction of the product right now, this is such a strong technology team that if they decide to pivot, this technology team would be able to build new technology quickly for them. In fact, my most recent investment, again, I don't want to kind of name it, is one where after meeting the CEO, I decided I wasn't going to invest because the business didn't make sense. But the meeting with the CTO was on my calendar and the meeting was set up. So I met the CTO and then they started showing me everything that they had built. I was inspired. And then I asked them, how long did you take to build this and how big of a team is it? And the CTO said, it's essentially me with 3 other engineers that I hired, and all of them are not very experienced. And that was truly inspiring for me because, like I said, at the early stage of a company, it doesn't make, especially if you're not building a tech company, it doesn't make sense for a CTO who's just setting the vision and it's not doing anything, directly contributing to deliverables every day. So I think absolutely crucial in my decisions to invest in companies that I get inspired by the tech team. And many times it's not the stability of the tech. Many times the early tech that you write in a startup is throwaway tech. You throw it away and you write it again anyway. It's how quickly you're able to move and whether you're hustling with the tech or not. So that is a bigger consideration than, okay, how beautiful is your solution or how scalable it is. It's more about how quickly can you do it, and have you hustled enough to kind of create a solution quickly.
Right. Thank you for that, Yasser. So, Ahmed, another question for you. So, you mentioned that you moved from software solutions companies or service companies to now building a product. So, how did your previous experience help you in leading Airlift? And also, when you meet investors, what are they exactly looking for in a product company's technical leadership? Part of the question was already answered by Yasser, but I want to hear the other side from you. Yeah.
So services compared to services and the way Airlift worked, and I'm not saying that this is a startup template. I hope it is. I wanted to unlearn a lot. I think the speed of services needs to go 3-4x faster. There is so much. There's so much room to move faster, and the thing is because we are selling hours and we are selling products to people who are overseas. At times, for their sake, we have to create a lot of layers of communication and reporting, and that is basically not required as such when you are on the floor in a startup. And I was working in a larger setup at 10 Pearls, and we had some serious customers like NASA and Coca-Cola and others, and so I really had to unlearn a lot of my Gantt charting and the my legacy thinking. And I think to my credit, if I moved quickly on that. After 18 years of doing a job in services, you pretty much become that. And so I think I didn't take a lot of time. And Smanbul, you have to meet him to believe how he operates. So he has his energy, his aura around that to keep up with them. I mean, so as co-founders, we have like 13 years of age difference, and to have that energy from a young CEO. So you really need to get in the groove. I think speed was one major difference. The other thing is that architecture is not something that's so beautiful and delivered in 6 months. Architecture is what runs today. Something that I can get to the customer today is the architecture. And as Yasser said, it was throw away. And we threw away, I don't know how many iterations of those, but every single time it has to work for your customers today. And you have to have a side of how it will work if these were 1,000 or then 10,000 and then 1 million. So there are so many decisions you have to take quickly that I think speed once again becomes the most important things. Even the developers who can build faster are more welcome. The people who can decide faster, move quicker are welcome, because they enable us to do things faster, maybe in the wrong direction. And if you read Paul Graham, there's a very nice small little essay from them. And he says, startup means talk to your customers, write code. So it's basically talking to your customers and writing code, and that's how it's different. How investors see there are different people. The investors that are representing institutions, investors who are doing personal investments, your friends and family who are doing angel checks versus large organization that they grill you. I remember the first interaction with Atif Awan. It was a grilling 2 hour of interview. This was my first meeting with, and he was taking a bet on Airlift, and he wanted to know what I thought. There was no question around the product. And he was finding me, and but when we were talking to first round capital, and when our Series A was closed, and I was talking to one of their partners, and they came back with this feedback that they evaluate speed of development as one of the core criteria, similar to what Yasser said. But I don't think it's a template, because there are a difference in check sizes, there are difference in organization sizes, and there are difference in the level of investment. I mean, you're writing an angel level check, so you need to have a lot of belief. Then you have, if you are doing it seed level, Series A, so every single time, I mean, same investors, same founders, criteria will change. So I don't think it's a template out there.
Right. Got it. Thank you, Ahmed. So I have another question for both Sophia and Asim. And Sophia, maybe you can go first. So when I say a small scale company, I'm talking about a company with less than 100 people. So for a small scale company, when is the right time to hire a CTO? And we have already talked about the role of a VP of engineering, but how a role of a CTO is different from a VP of engineering in your thoughts, Sophia?
So I think, as Yasser initially also said, that, we're talking about tech-enabled companies, or, startups that are using technology for their products, as opposed to, people who are actually developing technology. And, whatever you want to call them, the CTO, technology lead, the lead developer, or whoever, I think you need them from day one. As technology-enabled businesses, you cannot say that, even if you have outsourced development to a company, you need someone who can actually, again, bridge the gap between become the anchor between the development outsourced company and yourself. So you need, as a tech-enabled company, you need it from day one. And even in the technology company, you need that person to be there on board day one, deciding, making the technical decisions and all that. So someone who's confident, has the trust of the senior leadership, can actually execute technology. You need that kind of a person from day one. I have seen tech-enabled businesses who do not have technology resources on board. They have completely outsourced it, and they think that they can break it one day. They will not be able to do it. Because you need this. If you're talking about tech-enabled, you need these resources on day one. And again, the CTO, VP engineering, lead developer, lead system architect, whoever you want to call them, have that resource with you. The second thing, obviously, as we have also talked about, like VP engineering, more hands-on than the CTO. CTO, in my opinion, is someone who can actually translate the business vision to the technology team. If you have a bit larger team, say about 100 developers, obviously you need a CTO who is actually making sure that this whole ship is going in the direction where the company wants to go, and sets the direction for all of that. Then the VP of engineering can decide, the frameworks to use, the type of coding, the, development methodology, whichever way they want to go. It's something that is decided by the VP of engineering, but, CTO is going to decide the whole technology. If we talk about a company like ours, which is an IoT company, the CTO role is very important, because it has to cover a breadth, from hardware chips to sensors, chips, devices, all the way to AI tools, or coding for developing algorithms and all that. So the CTO role for us is someone who understands and can connect all the dots from hardware to AI algorithms and all that. So, and it has a lot more going on in between, with security coming into play, ease of installation, and scalability of the whole solution. So CTO, I've been saying this, hands-on, but I don't want them to be coding or actually building the hardware designs, but somebody who understands the whole breadth and decides the direction for the company. to continue delivery of the solutions.
Right. Asim?
Yeah, so I think so there are two questions. So one, if you don't have a tech co-founder, you need a CTO or head of engineering or whatever you want to call as early as possible. Right? But if you have a tech co-founder, I think the tech co-founder need to be good enough कि a couple of series अपना, let's say series A तक आप उसके साथ भी चल सकते हो. But I think then you need to ask this question at each next round when you are in series A, then series B, series C, series D. Do we need a new CEO? Do we need a new CTO? Do we need a new CFO? Because when you are going to the next round, you are committing something to the investor and you need the right leadership to execute on that thing. Maybe the co-founder team already have that skill set, maybe they don't have it. So they need to have that honest conversation amongst themselves if they have the right CEO, CFO, CMO, CTO, whatever, or they need someone else. And generally, I will be very surprised if a CTO or a CEO survives beyond 3 or 4 of these rounds, because then the scale is so different that in most cases, someone will be good enough to do that, but so in some cases, but in most cases, it will be just arrogance, know that I am the CEO and I am the CTO and no one else can take the decision. So I think as a co-founding team, the responsibility is there that is it time to bring in a professional CTO, CEO or not? Then there is, this question was CTO versus the VP of engineering bit. So yeah, as company go like it become bigger and bigger, these are two different roles. So VP of engineering is more concerned with the delivery. So people management, engineering management, processes, policies, all these stuff generally go under VP of engineering. And even if you go to things like software capitalization and those type of, all those administrative stuff, all that goes under VP of engineering. And CTO, even at that stage, is still looking towards how technology can create more and more impact. And so he's less concerned about these administrative things. And there can be a hierarchy where VP of engineering is reporting to CTO. And I've also seen that CTO is reporting to head of engineering. So I've seen both type of use cases. But CTO is more, again, outward forcing. But VP of engineering is that person who is like making sure that we can scale the team from 100 to 500 to 2,000. So that the role is different at that scale. Then important thing is about this thing is going back to the first question. If let's say you have raised Series B and you think that you have found the right CTO to execute the Series B commitments, so that you now think that you will be raising Series C and D, the CTO will be going to those investors. Is that if that CTO is not able to create that type of impact from technological point of view, you will be having a very hard time convincing the next stage investors that, okay, the team looks good, but their tech department looks weak. And technology becomes more and more important as you go higher and higher in this structure, because then you cannot have that scale unless the technology piece is weak. And one thing that I feel, at least in my line of business, is true, and probably same for Ahmed as well, that technology also means the technology balance means balance is very different from stage to stage. So in early stages, you need a CTO who really understands CRMs and apps and all that type of stuff. But at least in my case, in the later stages, Series C and D, we might be needing a CTO who understands IoT a lot more, who understands agri tech a lot more, rather than these general purpose apps. Because at that time, that's the technology that will create the greatest impact on your next level of scale. So yeah, so you may have to ask your previous CTO to take some other role, because now the technology challenges are so different from the skill set that that person has, that you need a different CTO at that time. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Right. So Asim, continuing on this discussion that we were just having, so what are we looking for in a candidate in terms of both technical and leadership skills? We know that we are looking for different things at different stages. But what are the general skills that we are looking for when it comes to a CTO, especially because we have discussed about technology, especially when it comes to people's management?
I'm assuming you asked this to me, right? Okay. So I think, again, just as Yasser said, so from stage to stage, skill set is different. But there's one thing I think that is true at each stage that I think Sophia hinted, that the person need to really, really understand how technology is supporting the business. So whether even it's a pre-seed stage, Series A, Series D, if a CTO is thinking more about technology rather than how it is creating value to end customers or the business, then that's a no-brainer that person is not the right person. Then that person is more like your chief architect or something like that rather than the CTO type. The CTO by definition is that person who is really good in technology but has a, because in tech enabled business sometimes CEO will say, oh, let's do this, and he will throw a lot of problems at you. But if CEO doesn't understand the business, doesn't have the context, he or she may be thinking more about how we can use blockchain and data science. That might not be the right answer. They just need to think, okay, what is the minimum technology that we need to use that can that is future proof a bit, but that solves the problem of today. And he or she cannot do that unless he or she really understands the technology. So I think we are talking more in terms of technology at each stage what CTO need to be, and I think that's probably true for all type of leadership today, is extremely data driven. That okay, we created, so I got this request to create this user story in this product, but how I would know that it created an impact? So if you are not measuring those KPIs through some instrumentation, you are probably not doing a good job as a CTO, because then you won't be a data driven company. Similarly, how you can track adoption through technology. So the CTO has to have this mindset, okay, this is the business, this is the technology that will solve this business problem, and this is how I will measure it using technology. So, and then he will or she will continuously see that data to see what is the impact of the decision. If the impact is not there, change the technology as soon as possible, because you are not able to solve the problem. I hope this. So data analysis, understanding of business, understanding of technology, all these 6 skill set at that stage is needed.
Right. So another question for all of you. So a lot of this role of a CTO when it comes to startups and product-based companies overlaps the role of a chief product officer, because I've interviewed a few CPOs in the past few weeks. I've seen that this is overlapping that area also. So do you think that these roles are similar, or a CPO is a completely different, skill set that is required? Maybe Yasser, you can start with that.
Sure. I was actually going to point out that I feel like this is one mistake that many startups in Pakistan make, which is the thing that they think that, we need a CEO and then we need a technical co-founder and that's all we need. Unless the CEO is a really, really good product person, I think this combination is not going to work. So I would much rather at the early stages of a startup, I would much rather have a very strong product person with maybe a few average engineers supporting them than the opposite, right? So really strong in technology, but average product people. Obviously, the ideal is strong product people and strong engineering people, but the ideal never happens. So I feel like in general, I'm slightly aware that I could be overgeneralizing here. In general, engineers make really bad product people because they think they already know the solution to everything. And that's why I think that unless you're absolutely sure that your CTO has some product capability that they have demonstrated before, product is such a thing that everyone can pretend to be a good product person. Like everyone has ideas about products, right? But my experience says that generally, if you've only been a very good engineering person, engineering manager, leader, you'd make a bad product person because you rely too much on your own kind of logic and intuition to get to an answer rather than talking to customers.
Ahmed, would you like to contribute to that?
Yes. So I think it's very right. So you have to actually question yourself. You have to question your intuition a lot. So what happened in Airlift initially, and for the first 6-7 months, I don't think for the first 6-7 months, I don't even have a piece of paper that has a spec written on it. So Osman and I would get on a call. I would write things on maybe a piece of paper, and that would be the UX. And the only 2 people who would be vetting for whether it's a good UX or not would be us 2 and one of our competitors' app, which we were very religiously following. But and you have to be very open about it because you have to get inspiration from somewhere. But we were constantly talking to customers. We were calling 10, 15 customers every single day. We still do, but the frequency has reduced. But so we are talking to people and asking them of what's the best thing you would want in the app earlier on, and note that down and deliver on that. But that would take you so far, and you really need that thinking person who actually thinks in terms of UX, a person who thinks in terms of usability. And we later on found a couple of very, very good people who helped us in so many ways, who would actually challenge us. The other thing is very important. It's good to hire people or have people in your team, but it's more difficult for them to have this clear empowerment of questioning you. Otherwise, they'll keep on saying yes to whatever ideas that comes from the co-founders, and that is extremely important for people to be able to question you, so that new ideas come in. There are good, intelligent people on the floor. Why should they listen to us only? Because they should be able to argue, and that's where good product ideas come in from. I think having a good product person is a must. Now, this is not only about UX and usability. It's about analytics. The person should know where to put events on, because the product person should have the idea of how to get the pulse of the customer, who is doing what, who is not doing what, and then make sense of it all. And then obviously there are data discussions after that. But yes, you really need to have a very strong product person team. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Ahmed. Sophia, Asim, if you would like to go on.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that, these are two parallel roles. So you cannot give your CTO the job to become a product manager or dictate the product, because then you compromise your technology and product both. So you need to have someone, it could be your CEO calling the shots about the product, or it could be your CTO, but your CTO should not be doing it. It could be CMO or CEO calling the shots on the product, and CTO, again, as I said, translate it for the team, take it to that direction and implement it. So it's a very clear that CTO has to implement what the product is being, is a product guy is telling you. And that's how it should be, that, somebody who is who's dealing with the product, because the chief product officer or whoever product manager role is also not a very narrow role as such, because you have to look at the usability, the analytics, the revenue that is being generated and everything. So it's a very broad role that you cannot afford to give it to technology resource, but has to be a dedicated resource looking at the product, which features would come in at what time, which features you would actually take out of your backlog, maintaining the backlog and everything. So I would say that these two roles are parallel roles, cannot be combined in one person.
Right. Yasser.
So I think, so it again depends on the stage. Generally, I think these two roles have some overlaps, but if you see it on a kind of like a band where on the one side there's technology, then the technology strategy, then the product development, product strategy, talking to customer, pricing. So CPO takes a lot more responsibility on this side, and CTO takes more responsibility on this side. But they do sometimes have overlap, or they work as a team when it comes to even the technology strategy or the product delivery. One thing is that so in many companies you will see head of product reporting to CTO. So there is no CPO as such. There are some companies who have CPOs. I know Adobe has a CPO. And many of these CPOs don't even have technical backgrounds. They have from economics or liberal arts and those type of backgrounds where they come from. And these are the people who really, really enjoy talking to customers and how they're using it, empathizing with them, and like really, really thinking that what are the actual problems that we need to solve, as compared to CTO, who is by definition inspired in solving the problem using technology. So in earlier stages, yes, generally company don't have CPOs, but even then it makes sense to have a dedicated product managers or lead product managers under your CTO who are fully empowered. In our case, it's very funny thing because I think even the CEO, so we have 3 co-founders, so 2 of them, or in fact 3 of them can be said that together they are actually the CPO. So I also kind of like influence how the product should be, but most of the product side of the things are coming either from the person who's taking care of operations or the person who's taking care of our growth or the CEO himself, that this is what I need and this is how I need. We do have product managers who are reporting to me, but they are talking more to these co-founders than me. So, but yeah, so there is an overlap and there is a difference. So in tech companies, definitely there's a need of CPO, because if you are not, if your product is just technology and it's not like really thing. So there are some companies, I don't want to name them, they are like really, really big companies who de-emphasize product, and there are more engineering driven companies and they are really successful, but they are more like an exception. But most companies you will see, they are actually have like a hierarchy of product management goes to the really, really top, including Microsoft and those type of companies. So, but in tech-enabled companies, I think the acting CPO is really the person who is running the sales or the operations or the supply, because they are the one who will be using that product to grow their business. And in that sense, we always think that CPO is not just about like building stuff; it is also about evangelizing it, making sure it is adopted. And so that seems more like an area that typically in the CMO role. So it's less technology and more like CMO type. So yeah, so these are my 2 cents on how CPO and CTO are working as a team and what the differences are.
Right. Thank you, Asim. And we do see overlap and also, certain differences in the way these roles work. Yasser, question for you. So what are the differences in mindset when we compare technical leadership in a product company versus in a service company? Because, you have experience with both, and what success looks like for a technical leader in these cases? Because I'm pretty sure that due to the change in context, the success looks differently.
I feel like the product company versus service company may not be the right dichotomy here. I feel like a service company could be servicing a product which is in very early stages. So, our organization, for example, works with product companies in early stages, and there the requirements are the same. You have to hustle, you have to move quickly, you have to engage with the product people very closely to make sure that you're not jumping into building things. That's, by the way, one of the mistakes that many of the startups in Pakistan make, that they'd basically jump into building things too early, and then the cost of actually rebuilding those things is too high. So if they had involved product people, they would help them test their ideas at a much earlier stage, so that they don't incur the cost of re-engineering those ideas. But anyway, so I think the right dichotomy is what's the right leadership for an early stage project, whether it's inside a service company or a product company, a mid-stage project and a late-stage project. So I think that's the right kind of dichotomy or spectrum, if you will. And there I feel like in the early stages, we've already kind of talked about it. You want people, I mean, it's okay to move fast at the cost of breaking things. I think nobody likes to say anymore that move fast and break things, which used to be Facebook's mantra. I think now mantra has changed slightly to move fast, and if it's okay if you break things. That's the kind of leadership that you want in early stage products. In mid to late stages, that's completely unacceptable. So, a Google service going down, that's an extreme example, but you can't afford to have somebody who's going to try something out, something new, and then the entire infrastructure goes down. That's not going to be possible. So a couple of years ago, we invited a speaker from Netflix, and they talked about how the entire engineering management's perspective, engineering management's focus has shifted to making sure that the service never goes down, because it's literally millions of people are streaming Netflix content, and they invested literally millions of dollars in figuring out how to release new versions of their software without the service ever going down. I think that's the distinction should be made. That's the distinction that should be made, not service versus product. I know Ahmed also commented on it. I feel like service companies could be working with customers like Coke, or service companies could be working with customers like, I don't know, in our case, Kayak or Insurify, which are very product oriented and which are very much like product startups. So does that answer your question? I don't know.
Yeah, partially it does. Asim, would you like to add something to that? Thank you, Yasser.
Yeah, so I will just answer it in context of how generally typical services company in Pakistan work and how typical these startups are working. So in product companies generally, whether you are doing product for yourself or someone else, you are actually thinking of technology in terms of that longevity of that technology. Is it good enough for that product that you can maintain that product and then you can innovate at the right pace and so on and on. So you are not changing technology every other day. So the decision is more or less like these. But in services companies, because you are doing projects for other companies, you have to think that what is the right technology stack to take a bet on. That, okay, right now I'm getting these Java projects, but in 6 months, I'm expecting a lot more Go projects coming or these type of projects coming. So how I need to start training my people and what is the right technology to bet on when people have idle cycles too, so they can pick up technology. So I think this is kind of, in other words, in services company, you have to predict what your customers will be, what type of project you will be getting from your customers, what type of technical requirements they have or needs they have, and train your people in line with that. And in product company, you are making technical decision to see that your product is, you can innovate on your product reasonably well in the future. So now you don't bet on a technology that get outdated in 3 months or 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. So yeah, I think this is one mindset thing that I see at least.
Right. Sophia, do you have any thoughts on that?
I tend to agree with Yasser a bit, like, the dichotomy that, it's the services company or the product company. Definitely, like if you are building it, for, a short period of time or as a project, you would think about it differently as opposed to when you're doing it for the product. Because as when you're building product, you actually have the whole product life cycle in your mind as opposed to project. And I think in services companies, your delivery timelines and everything is a little different. So I don't think that that you can do something like that. But I think, yeah.
I think just to build on to like what Asim also said, but then I think Sophia also alluded to, look, there are different roles, right? I mean, so there could be one engineering leader who's leading a product engagement in a service company. For that person, it's not important to decide whether Golang should be the next big technology shift that you want. So, but it is still an engineering leadership position. I mean, we've been part of services where we were the only engineering team that the customer had, and essentially all of the decisions that you would take in a engineering based product startup, we were taking those decisions. That's why I keep saying that the context really matters. There is another context which Asim alluded to, which is that, okay, we are, as a service company, largely a Microsoft shop. Should we add Java or Rust or Golang to our repertoire, to our arsenal? I mean, that's fine. That's you. The CEO could take that decision. As a CEO, that's the decision that I take for my organization. I'm not necessarily a CTO. So every answer is highly contextual, right? I mean, there's no one situation that, applies to all.
Right. So we have a question from YouTube. Farooq Bhatti has asked us that if a co-founder CTO is replaced after a funding round, how can he still contribute? How is he repositioned in a company?
I think that's a great question. Asim, you want to answer this, or should I?
So if I understood the question, that he's saying that if the technical co-founder is no longer CTO, there is a CTO, and then what's the role of the technical co-founder, right? This is kind of like the way. So I think it depends, it varies. So I think you can always look to West and see what co-founders were doing when they brought in some other CTOs. It could be different. I think as a co-founder, you just have so many other responsibilities. You can assume chief data officer or chief innovation officer or chief information officer or chief operating officer. So there are just so many challenges. Whenever you go big, grow bigger and bigger and bigger, you don't just really need any C level title. There might be certain aspect of the scope that are not on the critical path of what you have committed to your investor, and the CTO is taking care of all that stuff. And there are other things that are part of a longer term strategy that you want to explore, or maybe it's exit related some stuff that you need to do as a co-founders, or you want to expand into another country and you want to see how technology play will be there in the initial stages while the CTO is focusing on your core business and whatever is happening as a main commitment. So I think as a co-founder, there's no task that you can say, oh, that's not my duty. So just like before this, the CEO said, I want this type of data. I saw that is any developer is available. No one was available. So I wrote a SQL and sent it to him that this is your data. Another person came that I was doing this analysis and I'm having hard time doing it. So I sat with her and showed her how to use Excel to get that thing done. So as a co-founder, no task is beneath me, no task is beyond me. So I think that remains, even if you are no longer CTO, you are there to support the CTO, support the directors there, but you just want to make sure that you don't disempower the CTO for what you have hired that person for.
And I think one direction that typically happens is that you become like an evangelist, right? So in fact, one of my favorite CTOs is a guy named P SHA that you may have heard of. P was started as the CTO of HubSpot. But right now, and he still has the CTO and co-founder title, but if you looked at Dharmesh's Twitter, all he does is evangelize HubSpot and then talk about its culture and talk about, how engineers work at HubSpot. So I don't think he's taking any technical decisions for HubSpot at all. I'm sure there are many people who are at HubSpot finalizing the technology direction. So I think and this is true for pretty much all co-founders, because even the CEO can become redundant after Series B or C, or not have the skills to take the company to the next level. And then, essentially they become evangelists for the organization.
Right. Sophia, do you have any thoughts on that?
I would just agree with the Yasser and Asim that, I think again, we're just, too much trapped in the whole title business, but, you can call that person whatever, but you obviously as a co-founder, I think you always will have a bigger picture in mind, and, evangelist could be another role for you, or you find, any other position in the business where you can actually find yourself useful. So I think let's not get trapped in the titles and all, but let's get going and deliver, what is expected from the product. That's, I think, is a lot more important.
Right. We have 6 minutes left, and we have a few more questions. I'm just reading one more question. So Tasneem Ahmed, the question is, what is the one thing you would say was the most difficult to transition from a senior engineer to a CTO?
Okay, so
I think,
so
can I go? I think it's the interpersonal skills, because I think the technical people generally are very poor in their communication and their interpersonal skills. So the moment you decide to actually grow, and I have seen that people who have grown to higher position from their technical development role are the ones who have got interpersonal skills. So communication skills, people skills, that are the things that are, I think, more important as you grow higher in the organization. It also relates to the previous questions that, if somebody is hired as a CTO and you are now asked to find a new role, it's, it basically, you will only be able to accept a higher role or move on if you have a better people skills and you could actually support the new person who's coming in. So I would say interpersonal skills.
Yeah, Asim?
Yeah, so I'm not sure like if this is the right answer or like if I understood the question correctly, but when you're an individual contributor engineer, you are more or less thinking about that whatever the scope of work I am assigned to, how I can be like really good at that, how it can be done in the right time. So you're focusing less about what other teams are doing, what other departments are, and just focusing on this is my focus area and I need to do it well. But when you go into CTO, you have to see that how as an organization we can be an efficient version of ourselves on daily basis rather than an efficient version of myself on daily basis. So sometimes it may mean that if you are not doing anything today, that's fine, as long as you have empowered and enabled everyone else to be their better version that day. Otherwise, there will be a lot of people who will still have that individual contributor mindset. The team is not doing anything and they are doing most of the stuff. So that's kind of like, it may solve some problem at the shorter end, but if you are not enabling your team, then you won't be able to scale. So I see you are thinking of scaling yourself as a contributor, and as a CTO, you are thinking of scaling the organization as a whole. So I think this is the difference that I've had.
Right.
And I'll just add to what Sophia said. I think I'd just generalize interpersonal skills to more culture building. I think every tech team has a culture. Again, like every organization, every tech team has a culture, whether they realize it or not. And increasingly, a CTO's role is to kind of influence that culture. And that culture could mean any number of things. For example, yes, you could be doing blameless retros, but are they truly blameless or they're just called blameless? That's a cultural question that a CTO would have an influence on.
Right. So I think that is all. Thank you so much to all of you to be here. It was an excellent discussion. My background is in engineering, but most of my work is around product. So the question about CPO just came out of nowhere. I understand it was not planned. Just wanted to looking out for myself. Thank you so much for your time, and it was really insightful, and I'm really looking forward to the next episode where we are going to explore on this topic more. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting.
Thank you, Faiza. Pleasure, Yasser and Asim.
Pleasure, everybody. Great panel. Thanks.